Ghost in the Night with Phil Sams. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Ghost in the Night, a hauntings and paranormal podcast. This is the Sunday live recording where we record live on Facebook. So if you want to join us on Sundays at 6 o'clock, you're more than welcome to follow us on Twitter, like it, and all that crap. And you can join, comment, and all that good stuff. We already have one watcher. Hey, Jenny. Today is a special day. I will say that because I have a new co-host, and that is Travis. Travis, how are you doing today?
I'm well, man. How you doing?
Don't be so soft-spoken. You're a thug. We know you are. God, don't be.
You got to fake it till you make it,
Don't fake it. Don't fake it. Now, today we're going to talk about Turnbull Canyon out in California. It is a very fascinating place. It has a lot of shit going on that is crazy.
It covers the entire gambit from paranormal to just people being shitty human beings.
Exactly.
To everything. To a gate to hell.
Death. Well, let's be honest.
Potentially.
The gate to hell, I'm not going to, we'll just jump right into it, I guess. The gate to hell isn't there. I'm convinced. No. The gate to hell is actually on the border between Nevada and California. As soon as you step into California, you're in hell. Mm-hmm. Because California is so fucked. It's not even funny. Ooh, you're being paged. Work. No, but Turnbull Canyon is one of those interesting places because it has so much death, has so much. There has to be something there. But like we talked about earlier, there is a lot of urban legend stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah. It's, I would say mostly kind of, around the water cooler. Margaret saw this while she was hiking.
And the myth has just, over the years, since the 1800s, has really just grown. And you can't really know what to believe, per se. But before we get into Turnbull Canyon, let's go over some business. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at night_ghost, like Facebook at Ghost in the Night. We do have a Patreon page. Ow, I just cracked my knuckles. That hurt. Live podcasting, awesome. We do have a Patreon page, which honestly I have not kept up with because I really didn't care that much. But now, since Travis is coming on board, we are going to make more content. And this episode right now, we will continue recording. We're going to do about 45 minutes to an hour live that will come out on the podcast feed tomorrow. However you take in podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the list goes on, all the major ones. But we are going to continue recording and do kind of a post show that will be only for the Patreon. So it's only $2 a month is the first tier. Gets you all the bonus material, the investigation videos that I already have up, and this post show where we kind of just talk about the podcast we just did and have a little bit more fun. Because we do have to keep it a little bit cleaner on Facebook so I don't get banned, of course. Who really gives a shit? Because Zuckerberg's an asshole. Oh, we are officially banned right now.
Hey, it was a matter of time once you brought me into this that something was going to happen.
Such a bad influence on me. But if you want the extra stuff and the fun stuff, I'll be honest, is probably going to happen after the podcast ends. So if you want that $2, get off your lazy ass and don't be cheap and just donate $2 a month and you get all the extra stuff. Plus all the podcast episodes that I have done over the past 2 years. If you look on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I do not believe everything has transferred over to my new podcast host. So episodes 1 through, I think, 10 aren't even on the feed anymore. So you can't get those. But you can get those for free. You don't have to pledge for that. You can get those for free on Patreon or on YouTube. YouTube, I want to make a little bit more concerted effort with that as well because
YouTube runs the world. Yes, it's Google.
Google runs the world.
Shout out to Google.
Yes, please don't ban us. We won't talk conspiracy or
nothing, including them or Scientology.
Right? Oh, don't mention Scientology. I don't need them fuckers on my ass.
I love Scientology. They're great.
But you can go back on YouTube or Patreon and get all the episodes. They're all there.
I believe they're on Google as well. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure the last time I was on there, I believe it had everything from the first episode.
Really, that's cool. Because I looked yesterday.
I think because the first, I can't remember what it was called, but I'm pretty sure it has the whole library.
The first one was episode 1 was an introduction. Then I did, I think, Ohio Hauntings.
Yes. So, last time I was on there, I'm pretty sure that the entire library is on Google Podcasts.
I was just concerned because when I switched to Anchor, because I'm cheap and I wanted free, I didn't think, I know 2 episodes that I even talked to you about earlier they are not on there because I took them down, but I will put them back up. And I'm going to do a Throwback Thursday. So even if I know on Apple Podcasts, they aren't there. I checked this morning. I kind of was scrolling through all the episodes to see if they all showed up. And it stopped at like episode 10, I think. I was like, okay, well, maybe it just didn't. So I'm glad to see that, at least in Google.
Yeah, podcast. I know there's the last time I was on there was when you put out Demons and DMT. And as of that episode, there's 105 episodes in the library. Right.
And that was 108, and I knew 2. There might be one somewhere. You can't. I know they're definitely all on YouTube. And all on actually they're not all on Patreon because I've slacked. I think I still have to do 8 episodes, or I'm sorry, episode 100 I have to put up through I haven't.
Is that the one that we've talked about?
No, okay. That's one of them. I stopped posting on Patreon.
Yeah,
I kind of didn't give a shit. Well, it was about the time when all hell broke loose for me. I kind of quit adding to Patreon
when life came along.
When life came along and kicked me in the nuts. Life is good. We'll save that talk for. She doesn't listen. What the hell? We can say whatever we want. No, but
that's a Patreon conversation.
Yes, that is a Patreon conversation. If you want that, you want me to talk shit about people, you got to pay for that shit.
And if you pay for it, 0 problems doing that.
Right
at all times.
Okay, Turnbull Canyon. Now we're not going. If you've listened to podcasts or went down the YouTube rabbit hole, it's been covered a lot before.
A lot.
And we're not going to get too much into the dates. We're kind of going to cover it a little bit and talk a little bit about that kind of stuff, but we're not going to get real big on the history. We want to talk a lot more about the ramifications and what has happened and what does that mean? How does that play into what is actually going on? Now, it got its start basically. It was, as all paranormal sites, Native American, right?
In the United States, yeah.
Yes,
it all, pretty much everything that's worth anything to look into has some type of tie to that society, if you will.
Exactly. Now, naturally, the Spaniards came to Christianize the Native Americans.
Yep.
And throughout history, that has always gone extremely well, right?
It's basically got a 99.9% approval rating.
Yes, but apparently, this time it did not go very well. We are being facetious if you did not know that, by the way. Don't be a jackass.
I'm almost always going to be facetious, just so everybody knows. Jenny, facetious.
I have not spoken to Jenny in a long time.
Hi, Jenny.
Say hi. You can post a comment, too, if you like. Where was that? It got me all flushed. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Spaniards,
yes. The Spaniards came in. Now, this area, this canyon, I forget what tribe it was. It's irrelevant for me.
Yeah, I
know it's a kind of a weird name. It's not the most common.
Yeah, I know it wasn't like Navajo.
Right, yeah. I forget what tribe it was. But anyway, they hated this canyon. I believe they had a name for it.
They called it the Dark Place.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it in their native language.
I've heard it pronounced, and I was like, oh, sounds like something.
Yeah, I'm not even going down that rabbit hole.
But I've heard the Dark Place, and I also heard a translation, Evil Place, as well. Yeah. Or a place of evil.
And which stemmed from they wouldn't go there because once the sun broke the mountains at night, nothing.
Right. And that says something right there.
Yeah.
If Native Americans who have a history of being in tune with the land, love the land,
it's their life. It was their world.
And if they wouldn't go into it, that might be.
I'm not going.
It might be.
And the fact that it's a hiking trail now and a biking trail, because that's the first thing that came up, and it blows my mind. I'm like, man, I feel like you're tempting fate here by making it basically a national park.
Exactly. Now, the Spaniards, apparently, from what I understand, the stories that I've heard, they actually took this tribe, or the people of this tribe, took them to this place, to this canyon on purpose, hoping it would cause them to I guess, convert much more easily if I could speak the Queen's English. Apparently it backfired and they said no, and there was a slaughter, right?
Yeah, well, and I also read that they also, due to wanting the land, were going to or did push them into that anyway.
Really?
I don't know how much legitimacy there is to that, but, you know, it's not, I believe it because it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for a Native American tribe to have been displaced because they didn't go along with what was going on around them.
Exactly. Now, that's well and good. Whenever there's a massacre like that, when people get, I believe, you know, people know me, I have some strong theories on the paranormal. I firmly believe that when death happens, it imprints on the atmosphere, and that energy plays a role into it, whether it be an intelligent haunting, an actual spirit that died there stays there, and
or if it's residual.
I think residual is more common.
Yeah.
You know, that tragedy is replayed over and over and over again.
Yeah, because I think a residual haunting, to me, is almost more like just a memory of an environment.
Right. It's like a video playback.
Exactly.
So I think that area is ripe for that kind of activity. But the story doesn't end there. It gets even more creepier. And I want to talk about who the canyon is actually named after, because he sounds like a fascinating character, and I kind
of from everything I read and heard about, what was it, Robert Turnbull?
Yeah, I think good old Bobby.
He was definitely an alcoholic, and he was definitely a rowdy dude that I guess would fight anybody at any time. He sounded like kind of an asshole to me,
but he was Scottish, so
yeah,
they all liked
because he came. He that's pretty much where he ended up.
He was a sheep farmer. That's why he wanted that land. He apparently got a good deal. He wanted that because it had a stream rolling through it, and he was a sheep farmer, which is kind of funny. You don't think a tough guy would be a street farmer. Shepherd, sheep farmer. There we go. But the dog's in here with us making noises. We don't have a ghost.
It's okay.
But he was, like you said, he was kind of a badass, not completely well liked.
I didn't hear. From all the stuff I read, I never read any positive reviews of him as a human being.
Now, he did meet a tragic fate there. Apparently, from what I read, one night was at a bar, getting shit faced, got drunk, went home, got on his horse, and fell off his horse, hit his head,
and
we've all maker. Who have well, that's not what killed him. Actually, that did not kill him yet. The cops saw him, arrested him, took him to jail. Which I've never been in jail, but who hasn't fell off a horse? Got drunk, fell off a horse.
Yeah, I mean,
now they just fall out of a car. If you got
my horse is a Camry.
Exactly. But they took him to jail, and apparently he got out the next day and went home, and he was beaten to death. Or not beaten to death, but he was beaten really bad in jail. He had a housekeeper who saw it. I guess the next day he woke up, got dressed in strange clothes, wore her hat, and left, and that was the last time anybody saw him alive.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of people could say this was a paranormal thing or the land got to him. No, he got the shit kicked out of him.
Well, there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, he wasn't the owner of Turnbull Canyon at that point.
I think he had sold it to the Quakers at that point.
Yeah, because they had been trying for years and years, and I think they ended up settling on like $30,000 for the whole thing. I think it was,
which is a pretty good sum of money back in the 1800s.
Yeah, I mean, with inflation, that's
And the Quakers wanted. The Quakers wanted, and they got it, and they did end up finding him dead down by the stream, I believe. And
it wasn't named Turnbull Canyon until after he passed
Right, the
away.
Quakers-
They renamed it Turnbull Canyon in honor of a dick.
Well, they got the land from him, so
I mean, yeah, they got what they wanted.
and the Quakers, God love, they're nice people. The guy died there, so we'll name it.
Yeah, I've met some. They're good folks.
So that's I don't think that had really anything to do with paranormal. It might have his death might have, like I said earlier, added to the whole
lore,
but the negative energy. Whenever somebody, like I said, dies, that has an effect on the energy of that area. So that's the paranormal ball's just getting rolling there. Now this place From this point on,
it just snowballs.
Is a snowballs. Now, apparently in the 40s, I believe, this story is kind of weird. And we'll jump to this story, I guess, is the asylum story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a weird one.
Possibly the most mysterious one, considering that it is basically a hospital environment. Right. And nobody knows where it was.
Exactly.
Nothing. But it was there. We know that it was there.
There was a witness who, from what I've heard, somebody actually interviewed a lady that actually worked there. So we know it was there. But paper trail wise, there's not much going on there.
There's no city records. Right. There's nobody's found a concrete, like, for sure that's the foundation of this building. None of that.
Now, I did see a video. We'll talk about the gates to hell part. The video about the gates to hell at Turnbull Canyon. And there is some concrete stuff. Now, I wonder, could that be where the asylum was at? There was some kind of structure there at one time with steps.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the gates of hell and that kind of part in a little bit. But it's just weird that there's no paper trail to this.
I agree. That's what blew my mind. I'm like, how do you have this type of a facility and nobody at this point, from what I read, in the state of California has any record of it?
Right. Yeah, I just don't. But it adds to the legend of Turnbull Canyon. And that is, and we mentioned there's a lot of urban legends around this place. I think the asylum, a portion of this asylum, is the perfect urban legend, which is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
There's a story of some children or some younger kids were exploring in the canyon, and basically they came across the remnants of this asylum. They found the device, whatever they use for the electroshock therapy, and a child put it on and was sticking around, as they often do, got electrocuted.
Mind you, in a place that
had no electricity.
And I would imagine by that point was kind of in shambles of what it once was.
So this is 100% just a story. It's a BS story that somebody told kids just to keep them out of the area. But that is where the lore, really starts growing, and people start telling the story, and the legend of Turnbull Canyon really just grows from there.
Yeah, and once that, I agree with you. I think it's just kind of a, he said, she said, mom telling kids stuff not to go places. But from that point forward, chronologically, everything just it just keeps on, the population of people going through there goes up, the sightings of this or that, or experiences of this or that, and other occurrences that are actual documented occurrences of, stuff that we'll get into.
Right.
I don't know what order we're going to hit them in, but it just speeds up even more from that point.
Do you think this show's organized?
I hope not, because I'm not.
You've been here for the past hour. Have we seen very organized so far?
That's why I'm here. I've got a whole wardrobe and a stringless ukulele in my car right now.
Save that for the Patreon. No, but it does, the urban legend, and there's some things I definitely want to get into, because there's some factions of this story that I am fascinated with, and that is the occult stuff. And we'll get into that, because I think I want to end on that, because that's the best part of the whole.
And also, I think a lot of that is, obviously there's not photo evidence or anything like that, but from everything that I've read, people have definitely seen stuff in that realm,
ritualistic stuff going on there.
So I agree, because that's in my mind that's definitely happening. So I think it is a good last topic, because we can really dive into that.
It adds to the lore of something fierce.
Oh yeah,
but some other strange things happened there. A plane crashed, which
happens
on face value, that's nothing paranormal.
Yeah,
but
it's terrible, but it's not an abnormal occurrence in the world.
I believe it crashed in the 50s. And
something like that.
It was I've actually listened to some podcasts and some videos that did not even say it was just a legend, and there was no paper trails. And I've heard others say they had a flight, I think it was 422 or something. Don't quote me on that, but there is an actual flight number. 29 people died, and the majority of them were children.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes into what some people have seen. They have seen kids basically hanging from trees and stuff, in that
Or
area.
heard them. I read a lot of
heard
stories about
them.
people hearing, like they'll be out there hiking and they'll just hear like
Kids.
little kids playing.
Right. So, I mean, that adds to the legend. But with that death, I think that is a perfect example of how death affects the atmosphere in that area or any area where it happens. I think it's very possible that people are hearing things. And I know people feel like they're being watched.
Well, and there's also the little bit of a sidebar, because in my personal opinion, with hauntings and stuff like that, spirits being left behind, there seems to be, I've noticed, and people have talked to me about it, there's a lot of kids playing in a lot of these places all over the world.
All right.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in my mind, if you believe in spirits sticking around after the death of the physical body, a kid is kind of a perfect storm, because a kid, especially, they're so young that when that tragedy happens to them, they don't know the severity of really what's about to happen.
Right.
So I think that just kind of multiplies the possibility that their spirit is gonna kind of pop up and be like, well, where's my toys? Where's mom and dad? And they're, you know what I mean? Like, the confusion of death for a kid, I feel like, just kind of amplifies the possibility of that spirit possibly sticking around.
And plus, children are more open
Yes.
to the supernatural
100%.
than adults. Or as we get older, it's beaten out of us, or it's not really beaten. It's
You're
conditioned out of us.
Yes, you're conditioned to go to work and to worry about, like, you got to be on this conference call at 3 p.m. and that's all you basically, the way I look at it is life and the people around you just put blinders on you like a horse once you hit about 16, 17 years old.
Right. But those kids are more in tune with it. So when they do pass, it might be, I'm just spitballing here, easier for them to manifest or be seen by us, because they're more open. That's just a theory that I have, that it's because you hear a lot of stories about children. You know, people always hear
Everywhere.
giggling and toys. People use toys as, trigger objects.
Yep.
In just about every place I've ever investigated, there's always been some kind of child type haunting. So this is with Turnbull Canyon, with the 20, I believe 21 kids died. I think there were 8 adults and crewmen. That definitely has something to do. That could definitely play an effect in what people are experiencing there.
Yeah. And then, like, and we've talked about this multiple times over the last week since we decided to do this. I do, not that it feeds to the paranormal in any way, but I do, the fact that, like I said just before we started this, it's like they just brushed the whole thing under the rug. Right. And just didn't even want to accept that it was a thing. Because, if in details of the whole thing, the airline did get shut down. They grounded like 40 of their planes for violations. But that information didn't come out. And from what I understand, a lot of people were unaware that there was even a horrific tragedy where a bunch of children lost their life in a plane crash in Turnbull Canyon out of nowhere. Right.
So it's just weird how, of course, it was in the 50s, or it might have been in the 40s. I don't remember exactly when. I think it was the 50s that plane crashed. I mean, things get lost, I guess. I mean, it's possible, but it's just kind of weird that it's so up in the air whether it happened or it didn't happen. But now we know it. There's been documentation that it did actually happen. So this place is just so confusing.
Well, and it in my mind, it kind of goes down the rabbit hole of, so you've got a plane crash that, at least at the time that it happened, was not making headlines, which that makes headlines.
Right.
We're in Ohio. If a plane goes down in Michigan, which is hundreds of miles away, we're going to know about it, because it's not that common. It does happen, but it's not that common of an occurrence.
Right.
And you take that and add on the whole asylum thing, and, obviously it's my mind working the conspiracy thoughts, but I'm like, you have a lot of stuff going on in one place that is concrete stuff that there's either no record of, or there was almost an attempt to cover up.
Right.
Still to this day.
Which is, the cover up aspect is very possible. But
yeah.
of course, it's hard to cover up.
Yeah, and then, if my mind worked that way, I'd say, there's a government bunker 200 feet under the ground, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, well, we can't talk about that because that'll definitely get us
I
banned.
also don't think that, so I'm not Sam Tripoli.
Hey, don't knock Sam.
I love Sam Tripoli. I'm just saying he gets a little out there.
A little shout out to Tinfoil Hat. Maybe we'll get on his radar now.
Oh man, I love the man. He just sometimes he
and
gets,
he's actually a hell of a comic.
He is.
He is. Funny
he gets so deep into that stuff. Him and what's that guy? That jiu-jitsu guy, Johnny Bravo or something like that.
No, Eddie Bravo.
Eddie Bravo, yeah, Joe Rogan's buddy. Like, man, they're I love them, but good Lord, do they get in depth into those conspiracies?
And you can't talk about conspiracies anymore.
Yeah.
YouTube and Google will bend you over, and of course they're not going to do much to me. Piss on it. Anyway, there is no doubt this place is filled with death.
Yeah.
Just from the mere fact, bodies have
Confirmed death.
Yeah, bodies have been dumped there.
Mm-hmm.
People have come across bodies. Of course, that's not super strange. Hell, it just happened here in Butler County, here in Ohio, just the other day.
Oh yeah, like I said, I used to live right on the other side of the train tracks from this where we're at right now, and on Second, and they found a body in a dumpster on Pershing, like a week after I moved into that apartment.
But you take all this, the plane crash, the weird stuff that went on with Mr. Turnbull, the Native American massacre, and whenever Native Americans are involved, shit gets real.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably somewhere in those hills some sort of burial.
Oh, for sure.
I think
a critter.
I think it's a cat. There's a feral cat that roams
They're
around,
everywhere.
and I swear that cat gets up in the roof.
Oh, probably.
I got a 22 with his name on it.
I don't know. I'd say 100%. I'm gonna go a little Bagans on this. That's a ghost, dude.
No, we're not going to fake that shit.
That's Robert Turnbull.
We're pissed off. It's probably actually Zuckerberg. He flew in real quick to piss on me.
Oh man.
But where was it? Shit, we went off.
You were adding up all of the
Okay, the strange, the bodies being dumped there, the murders that have happened there,
the attempted murders.
The attempted one lady survived. You know a little bit more about this story, but before we get to that one, let's tell about the lady. There was 3 people, 2 men and a woman robbed. They robbed something. I don't know.
See, and that's what I'm saying, because either you and I have different stories on that one.
Well, I think there's 2 different stories.
Or I'm just crossing over.
I think you're crossing. I think there's 2 different stories.
Because I've heard, we talked about this. I went full bore into just reading and listening to everything I could once I found out about this place.
But there's 2 stories, because I've heard both stories to a story. But I just paid more attention to because the lady who was killed, they robbed something. They thought she was going to snitch. Of course, why'd you bring her if you thought she was going to snitch? Mm-hmm. They shot her in the car while they were driving, kicked her out of the car. She got caught up.
See, yeah, I was wrong. I had them mixed. Because the one that survived is the one that I had mistaken for this story.
Right. She got hung up in the seatbelt as they kicked her out the car, and they drug her like 5 miles.
Yeah, which is not, like we already talked about, not a mistake. You do not drag a human body essentially next to your car because it's a seatbelt for that long and go, oh man, I didn't even know.
Clark, dragging the dog.
So he probably kept up for a couple miles, poor little guy.
But she died, and they did actually catch those guys like 5 years later.
Yeah.
Through a witness. I guess somebody actually saw it. And,
yeah,
and those guys.
That's the one that blew me away. Like, how do you do that and you do it so sloppily that there's a witness to you dragging a dead body for 4 or 5 miles?
But this is like in 2002. But it's a very well traveled area just from the mere fact it's the hiking place. So somebody.
Yeah, people. That's what blew me away, because I had heard these stories from. I listened to a podcast. I don't know how licensing works. I don't know if I can shout out that podcast, but I heard all this stuff, and then I brought it up to you, and you asked me. I specifically remember thinking like I got like a you vibe.
Right.
It was you, but I could tell that I piqued your interest a little bit, because immediately the first thing you text me back, I asked you if you heard about Turnbull Canyon, and you got, what's going on there? I was like, dude, everything.
Because I immediately Googled, and
And that's when my mind got blown, because the first time when I Googled it initially, everything that pops up is hiking trail,
Right.
bike trails,
Yeah.
this, that. And I'm like, how is it that popular, knowing the history of it, that many people are out there? Don't get me wrong, I've seen pictures. It's gorgeous out there.
But yeah, scenic, very scenic.
But like, I was like, man, like how it kind of weirded me out that that was like the first 10 links was like things to do in Turnbull Canyon.
Right.
This trail's cool. This one's really hard. Like,
Right.
and then you dive a little bit, and then you get into the mysteries of Turnbull Canyon, hauntings,
the
like
occult.
you said, the occult, which
is
that is
awesome.
Yeah, that's the
The icing on the cake of this little
that's the fastball
shit
right
show
in
of
the
a
pocket.
story. But the story you heard, I don't know. I've heard the story. I kind of was half listening. I think
About the girl, they called her the girl who lived.
Right. I think she's one. They beat the hell out of, stabbed her in the neck.
Yeah.
Pushed her down the canyon.
And all this was over. I can't remember the exact details of it, but it was over. It was basically he said, she said, high school kid bullshit.
Yeah.
And she, honestly, like, they messed that girl up so bad that, man, like, at the time with the pain she must have been going through, like, she might have been better off just calling it quits. They messed that girl up so bad over, it was like something about somebody slept with somebody before or after a relationship when it shouldn't even have mattered. And because of that,
on a break.
Yeah, because we've all been.
We've all been on a break.
I've been
and
on
got
a break.
accused of cheating. I won't mention any names.
I've been on a break for about 6 years. She doesn't know it.
She's not aware of it yet.
But yeah, and then next thing you know, like I said, don't take my word on this. I don't know the exact details. I've only actually heard this story, the backstory of it, one time. I didn't really find that much information on it other than that. But it was basically some he said, she said stuff. And I believe what I read or heard was on behalf of the boyfriend, or in order to not have the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend find out, these guys were like, well, we're going to shut her up. And they beat the shit out of her, tried to kill her by beating her to death, from everything I could surmise, if you will. And then, like you said, cut her throat open for the most part. And I believe there was some other aspect to the attempted murder, and then throw her down into the canyon or somewhere in the canyon. And somehow she gets up and walks out.
It's a tough bitch.
Yes.
I'm saying. Badass. Or these guys are just really freaking bad at killing people.
A, they're pussies. B, I'll have her babies.
Exactly. Because she is a badass.
Yeah, she was. Because that man, the newspapers called her the girl who lived. Yes. And it's because, like, good God. And just, you throw in the fact that it just all happened to happen on the way to and at Turnbull, and you've got a whole nother level to this, because everybody's going to be like, it's the spirits and the energy of Turnbull, which I don't agree with. I do find it very interesting that this stuff does just seem to accumulate around that area, because it's not that big of an area.
No, I think it's only like a 5 mile.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not. Yeah, it's
like,
not that big.
If my big ass can walk from one end of it to the other, it's not a huge area.
Right.
So you take all this stuff, and I do think it has something to do with it, in that if you have something going on somewhere and you add a certain level of lore and shitty activity to it, if whatever's going on there, it's going to feed off that energy, just like it pulls off batteries, stuff like that. Energy is energy, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to something paranormal.
Right. And energy is the key of life.
Yeah.
And that's why
they say it never gets destroyed.
Right. Energy never dissipates.
Yeah. It just moves on to something else.
That's one reason why people are so fond of spirits and afterlife. If we are energy, our energy doesn't dissipate when we die. It just moves on to the next realm or next stage of evolution. Now, there's some more urban legend-y stuff that goes on there, like with the hanging tree,
a lot of just straight up urban legend stories.
The age-old story of, I think, a guy and a girl were out cruising around in Turnbull Canyon, and they have car troubles, or they were hooking up, one of the two.
Which the car troubles thing is all in urban legends and personal stories is an ongoing thing.
Which is complete bullshit for the mere fact of, from the story that I heard about this particular episode, they had car trouble. He said, I'm going to go get help. You stay in the car.
Yeah, because that's what you do.
Yeah,
you leave your girlfriend in the middle of the desert in pitch black because it's the desert and it's a canyon. You go, babe, love you. Crochet me some socks. I'll be back. I'll be back. 4.5 hours.
Of course, how stupid is the girl? No, you're not.
Right.
I'm coming.
No, I'll take my chances with the coyotes and the rattlesnakes. Thank you.
But anyway, this urban legend, she stayed behind. He did not come back. She eventually fell asleep.
Mm-hmm. She fell asleep to what she thought was the soothing sound of raindrops on the roof.
Which I'll tell why this is bullshit in my opinion even further.
I agree that it's bullshit. It's both our
But
opinions.
she was awoken by a cop banging on the window.
Yes.
Now, from what the story said, the cop pulled her out of the car and told her not to look up. As we all would do when somebody tells us not to do something, we immediately do it. Just like the other night at the bar, you say, don't look at that guy. Guess what? I turn around and look at that motherfucker. But she looked up and saw her boyfriend hanging, bleeding, and that was what she heard dripping on the car, the blood dripping on the car. Of course.
Mind you, interjection from a tree that just so happens to perfectly be sitting over the car.
Right. That's perfect. But if he was dripping that, how long did it take for him to bleed out?
Right.
And where did that blood go? Doesn't rain from... Have you ever not been in a car and watched this rain pour from the roof of the car down?
Well, and also, what are the extenuating circumstances that were making him bleed out after supposedly hanging himself or being hung? Which, I don't know. I could be wrong, but anything I've ever seen does not cause a blood flow to the point that you're going to drip onto the top of the car. Right. Now, post, rigor mortis, all that, I don't know the details of that, so that could have something to do with it. But still, it doesn't really matter because, like you said, in my mind, it's just a bullshit, scary story.
The kicker of the whole thing, the cop just tapped on the window of the car.
Oh yeah, didn't blast it with his flashlight, gun drawn, and go, "There's a dead guy on top of you. What's going on?"
Exactly. So he was just calmly hit the window, woke her up, said, "Come out of the car."
Right, as if he just walked up and he was like, "Hey, ma'am, who's this asshole up here?"
So, obviously, they need to do a better job with their urban freaking legends.
Yes.
Because that one sucked. Now, we're getting close on time. Damn, we've been going 40, not quite 40 minutes. But
really? Yeah. I dig it, man. I'm down. I'm having fun.
But let's get to the good shit. Occults, because I love me some occult shit. And this is where it gets freaking interesting. Because there have been reports of people stumbling upon, hooded figures having ceremonies.
Bonfires in the distance.
I heard of one story where they were back. This was actually, and it's been going on for, even since, I guess, the Quaker days.
I was going to say, from everything that I looked up, the occult or something satanic or something along those lines has pretty much been relevant in that area since the area itself was relevant. Right. And mind you, and I will say, before we get into this, I will throw into the fact that I do take a lot of the urban legends and a lot of the body dumpings and stuff with a grain of salt. Because as you said, it's not, unfortunately, not that uncommon in the world that people kill people and they dump their bodies. And what better place than the desert? But not to, shit on anybody, but I do know that it is close to L.A., and it's also close to Whittier.
Right.
Whittier's Whittier, California, it gets real hoodie over there. Right. Like grimy shit happens there.
What's the one town on the other end, Hacienda Heights?
Yeah.
Isn't that uppity? Isn't that?
I believe so. I've
heard of it. I've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just like any other area. I'm sure it's got but I know for a fact we all know LA,
which is a shit show.
And I know for a fact I know people that have been lived in Whittier, California. Like Whittier, California has some real straight gangbanging dudes out there.
So they need a place to dump the body.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, I do take a lot of this stuff with a a decent sized grain of salt, because you have to look at the surrounding geographic area. If you have grimy shit going on and you've got a canyon in the fucking desert that nobody wants to go to because it's haunted and people get hung by trees that are just perfectly placed over their cars. Right. What better place to go? You know what I mean? It's just like the mob doing out in the desert in Vegas. Nobody's going out there.
Right. It's a perfect storm of opportunity.
On top of, in my opinion, I believe yours, also being like a perfect storm of, even if it's not paranormal occurrences, the potential for it.
Right.
Because there's just so much stuff and so much energy.
And one thing you need to take a look at is reverse psychology.
Oh, yeah.
If you're dumping bodies out there, I'm spreading the rumor that, hey, that place is fucking haunted. Don't go out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to find that shit.
Yeah, especially when you have a place like that, you're going to use the reputation of that place to your advantage to be like, yeah, or, you know, and especially I think that has a lot to do with like the hanging tree type stuff. Right. Is like, if you have a very specific area that you just push that on, it becomes something that you can utilize to your advantage, not even in dumping bodies, just in general.
Right. But the occult stuff is, like I said, it's interesting just for mere fact. That shit goes on. People are into some weird and crazy shit.
Yeah, the occult thing is one of the things that I have zero doubt in my mind is fully present and fully happening in this place.
And it wouldn't surprise me if it's somebody down the street having rituals in their basement.
Oh, yeah. It happens everywhere.
Because people are into some weird stuff. But, you know, I think it's fascinating. I mean, I do think the whole satanic cult thing does get a little overplayed. I think
it's an easy scapegoat,
right? And from what I've done episodes on, you know, the Satanic Panic.
Satan, God, the original one or the new one?
We're
doing it again.
We're doing it again.
Yeah.
Now back in whatever the 80s, the early 80s when the first one came about.
Oh my God, it was awful. They're killing kids. They're harvesting their blood. Because I remember the tail end of it as a kid, seeing it on the news and stuff. Because that's when everybody started getting scared.
Right. But I've looked into there's several branches. Satanism is just like religion. There are so many. Many branches. It's not even funny. But I've looked into a lot of them, and what they believe, they don't even necessarily worship Satan.
No,
it's about self-discovery. It's about self-power.
I think that's perfect. I think that's what it is. I think it's all about, in my personal opinion, from all the stuff I know, I think it's just a power thing.
Right.
I think it's somebody who has experienced life in a way that they feel like they've been weak and downtrodden, and they found this way to, which, personal opinion, as long as you're not hurting anybody, do you, boo-boo?
Yeah, do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But the occult ritual type stuff, people doing the black magic, doing sex magic, which, by the way, I could be behind.
Aleister Crowley.
How do you get into that? I mean, I might be down for that shit.
I'm totally down for it.
A little sex magic? What the hell?
That's what I'm saying. I'll check. Give me some latex and a magic wand. I'm in.
And whip some chains, whatever, and we'll dance around the fire naked. But
I do it every Thursday anyway.
Too much freaking information. This is his first and last episode. No,
but he will be there on Thursday.
Yes, I will, with bells on. But
on his nipples.
Oh no, they're sensitive. But it does. The whole thing that happened, and I've heard stories of people walking up on it. I've heard stories in this area of people walking. So and I even heard of one situation that Ramirez, a serial killer,
I think Richard Ramirez. Yep, the Night Stalker.
His clan or cult or whatever he was a part of.
Because he was an open Satanist.
Now, some people believe he just did.
I think it was mostly shock value,
right?
But
but
he was still an
practice
asshole.
Apparently, and he was reported his group practiced in Turnbull Canyon.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that's interesting about people who do that ritualistic type shit, most of them have no clue what the fuck they're doing.
No, they don't know what they don't know how pissed off the bear is that they're poking.
And I think now some probably do. Some are trying to actively draw something in.
Yeah, but no, and I agree, because not everybody out there in the world that's fucking with all this stuff is not Aleister Crowley or a guy like that who is basically out here writing the book on all this. You know what I mean?
Right. So it is very interesting, and I think that whether they openly try to conjure something or just dicking around, doing spells, doing rituals, conjured something accidentally.
Yeah.
That is very possible. And that.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you consider that I did hear one story that obviously it's all stories. We don't know any of this to be fact. But I did also hear a story about somebody, I don't know if they were out there hiking or what they were doing. I'd imagine it was the middle of the night because the occult tends to dabble in the dark.
Yes.
And I heard something about somebody being out there and walking up, basically just strolling up on a fire with a bunch of hooded people with a cross that had a under like 13-year-old kid strapped to the cross, which in my mind, either you've got some really jacked up school project that you're making, or if, God forbid, because nobody wants this to happen to anybody, but God forbid that's a true story, that's a sacrifice. It's got to be. Well, if that actually occurred, you're not just strapping a kid up on a cross to not take him out in the name of the Dark Lord.
I heard that. I can't remember. I read that story or heard that story.
I actually heard it. It was on.
Yes, it was on that. Yeah. They beat the shit out of the kid.
Yeah.
They just took turns beating the shit out of him. I guess the cops came. Or somebody came and broke it up. Or somebody started to come. Carlite started to come.
Oh yeah, something happened. Some wrench got thrown into their shitty gears.
And that was the first account, and then after that, I guess that area had a rash of abductions of missing children. So you take all the stuff that we just talked about, the Native American crap, the strange happenings, the plane crash, the death, the buried bodies, you put that all in a cauldron, stir that shit up.
And like you said with the abductions and stuff, like if you believe any of it to be true, which like I said, it's got to be to an extent. Right. There's definitely people doing stuff out there. Right. And it just kind of adds to the legitimacy of the whole thing, because realistically, in my experience with reading about the occult and trying to learn about them, they do tend to swing on the younger side for people that they sacrifice because of their purity. Right. In that, and the other, and they're just a bunch of, let's be honest, they're a bunch of pussies, and it's an easy target to go grab an 8-year-old instead of trying to get my big ass.
But that's how it's been throughout history. The Mayans, they didn't sacrifice older
women
people.
And children.
It was young children and women.
Other than that, he was basically a volunteer.
Right. Whenever sacrifice throughout history has taken place, it's always been young children or women. The virgin type shit. So, but you put all that stuff together and you have something weird going on here. I don't doubt there's something weird going on here. Now, is it?
There's definitely there's something.
There's something weird going on there.
I can't put my finger on it, but there is stuff going on, whether it's entirely paranormal or. Because there's also some ET stuff thrown in there.
Yes, there has been some UFO
Which
sightings.
that I kind of, that one I also take with a grain of salt before anybody jumps on me on any of these comments later. Yes, I know it's a mathematical impossibility that we're the only intelligent life in the universe, but in my mind, a lot of the ET stuff and the witnessing of things like that, I think a lot of it can just kind of be chalked up to some stuff.
Misidentification.
Yeah, like it happened to us. I remember because this is the first one I pull on everybody is when you see people, especially around here, because a lot of people don't know about it, is people you'll see in the summertime lights in the sky doing formations, depending on where you're at in the area. But because we saw it in high school and everybody was like, yo, you legitimately saw these lights, 3 or 4 lights, like making squares, triangles, moving in unison. Come to find out,
parachuters,
hot air balloons.
All of them.
They have like little groups, and they go out and they do that and video it because it's cool. More power to you. Fucking hot air balloons, man. Because I tried to tell all my friends after I found out. I was like, "Yo, like I bet you we could probably find a date and be like, that's exactly what we saw."
Where was I coming? I was coming from driving. Where was I at? I was driving somewhere, coming back from someplace, and it was dusk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't dark. It was, you know, sun was starting to set.
Twilight, if you
will. There
will.
was something in the sky, just floating along. And but it wasn't lit. It was dark.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the hell is that? I was like, cool, I'm seeing a UFO. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got up to it, and I just was staring at it. And this was just like last week or something. I started looking. I was like, that's a freaking parachuter.
Yeah.
As the closer I got to it, I could see the parachute. The parachute takes shape, and a guy dangling on it. I was like, oh shit! I got excited.
Yeah.
Nothing. But most of UFO, 90%, especially in this area, with Right Pat being just up, 20 miles up the street.
Don't even. That's a whole nother podcast episode we can get into.
But people do misidentify a lot of shit.
Oh yeah, and I do think I think a lot of it is on behalf of, not on behalf of, but I do think a lot of it can be traced to the government, and I don't think, before we get into that, I don't think it's them trying to pull one over on us or anything like that. I think it's just, especially depending on the area, especially when you get out in the desert. Right. There's a lot of testing that goes on in areas like that. There's a lot of testing that goes on in areas like this because we have Right Pat, which is a massive Air Force base.
That is,
and
like I said, that's another podcast.
Yeah, and when I bring up the whole government thing, I do think there's a lot of misidentification in the right areas because they're just out testing something. I don't think they're trying to be sneaky about it. I just think it might be something we're not used to seeing, or they might do it at the right time and the light catches it the right way, and you just don't know. Because I remember even when I was a little kid, when they were doing, that was when the age of the, I don't know what the what is it, C-130 or something, the black triangular stealth jet, when that was like still kind of under wraps. Oh, sure as shit, we were about 8 years old on our bikes, and one of them bastards flew over our neighborhood right over in Liberty Township. Yeah. Couple 100 feet off the ground, because I remember it rumbling the ground as we're standing there. And that's why I think, I think it's just a misidentification of some normal shit.
Shape of the boomerang or triangle UFO. It's perfect.
Yeah. And like those sightings surely peaked around the mid to late 90s when that airplane or jet, whatever you want to call it, was officially common knowledge that it was the technology that they had been working on.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe there's some.
For sure.
ET has.
For sure.
I don't think ET's visiting us. I think ET's already been here.
Yes.
And is here. That's what's underneath the ocean and Antarctica and all that shit.
Yes.
I think they're here. But I think 95 to 98% of all UFO sightings are
bullshit,
or just good people misidentifying.
Yeah, it's just like, in my opinion, we've had this conversation. I think a good 90-95% of Bigfoot sightings, man, you saw a bear. You know what I mean? Like you peripherally saw a bear run into the woods, saw a big hairy thing. Oh, Bigfoot! Yeah. Right. It's a Sam Squamch.
And people are notoriously horrible witnesses.
Yeah.
Now,
naturally.
Here's where
that can't be helped, though.
Here is where, whether it be things that are going on in Turnbull Canyon or the UFO. Now, if it's trained observers like cops that are experiencing these things or talking about these things, or like jet fighters, the Tic Tac with Commander Fravor, them some badass individuals that are trained to be calm under pressure, cool under pressure. They're trained observers, and they know what they're doing. They don't freak out. They're much better at observing something and being rational than you and I.
Yeah.
So when it's somebody like that sees something weird or experiences something weird, whether it be UFO, Bigfoot, some kind of cryptid, or paranormal, I'm gonna lend that a little bit more weight than just Sally down the street saw a shadow figure walk across out of a corner of her eye.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like you and I. We sat at the bar and talked about. I remember talking about just the stuff that has happened to me at work.
Right.
Everybody has stories. Everybody has stuff going on. Everybody thinks it's this, and it might not be.
We got a ghost in the ceiling, apparently.
Yeah, a cat ghost.
Or a cat ghost. But Turnbull Canyon is definitely something going on. I think it is a perfect mix of urban legend, which don't get me wrong. I do think there are some truth. There's a grain of truth in even urban legends, I believe.
It starts somewhere.
But now it just gets the old telephone game. It's just one person that just gets blown up.
Oh, yeah. It turns into Sally stubbed her toe and got gangrene and had to cut her foot off, to Sally was brutally murdered and dismembered by Bigfoot, an alien, and the ghost of Abraham Lincoln while William Shatner narrated it.
Oh, that would be just a...
I would...
Sounds like a party.
I know it's a snuff film, but man, like I might actually be down to watch that.
Yeah. Now, but let's... With all the death that happened, there is definitely something going on there. And
there's if nothing else, there's some type of a probably just ancient energy to that land that just breeds negativity. Because I would be interested to go there, because I've been to places that I've heard stories about, and you walk in and it's like almost like you just are just like doused in a layer of like whoa.
And I've been in places.
So have I.
I've talked about this on podcasts. The dollhouse in Indiana, the haunted dollhouse. I walked in that. There was one room. It was about the size of the kitchen area. Dolls all over the place, creepy as shit. But you could just feel the energy. I mean, it got me nauseous. But that was the only room. Yeah, and it wasn't the whole night. It was when I first got there. I felt heavy. You could. It was almost like the air was just pushing you. Gravity was pulling you harder in that area.
It happened to me. Like, I won't go into where this was because, mind you, it's outside the statute of limitations for years. I was not.
Don't admit to any crimes on the podcast.
I was a young, dumb kid. I didn't like vandalize anything, but like technically we weren't supposed to be there. This was 15 years ago. You know what I'm talking about. We talked about it last night. It's in.
I know nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's in Ohio. But I remember being there, and there was a lot of lore and people talking about the occult or Satanists going into a certain area of this building and doing things, because they would say you could see on certain nights there would be a candle light and that would move into different parts of this tower, if you will. And like I went through that whole place when I was there, man, and weird. Yeah, some weird stuff. Met a homeless guy in there. He's pretty nice. Asked me for a cigarette. But I sure as shit, I don't know what it was or what happened there or who was doing what, but I stepped into that. We'll call it a tower. I don't think it's technically a tower, but there was like, it's just, I walk in the room and man, like you just get, it was like a weird mix of just sad and like this like just overwhelming like dread almost. It was not a good feeling. No. I didn't like it. I'm a fucked up person, so like that stuff kind of excites me to an extent, but you don't like feeling it at the time. Right. When you get out of there, you're like, oh man, that was kind of cool, you know? But at the time, you just kind of want to back out and just be, I'm never going to go in there again. Thanks, though. It's a no for me, dog.
But I think that is what Turnbull is. That is the kind of energy that canyon has. Yeah. And that is what people are feeling. Now, is it as bad as what YouTube makes it out to be? Because like we said, and I want to talk about this before because we're running long for this show. But there's something, like we said, there's some strange shit going on. There's something the gates of hell, which we really didn't get into too much. Now, because
we both think that's bullshit.
Bullshit to a certain extent. But the videos I saw, I'm not even sure there's just gates. Mm-hmm. But there is a part of that. I saw videos about a dog. It looked like a German Shepherd. Yeah. And then I saw another video where people were actually got inside the gate and were filming, and that dog showed up.
Mm-hmm. And there's also, I believe there's one that the dog might have actually gone at somebody. Right.
Well, I think it started coming to this. There's two people, a guy and a girl, and they got out real quick. Yeah. It looked like it. You only saw it real quick in the camera before she freaked out and turned the camera. But it was coming toward her.
Which that's a hard one to dive into, really, because it could. That animal could physically actually be there. It could be a dog. It could be a coyote. It could be.
I think it's an actual dog because I got a pretty good look at it from that video. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, didn't look sick. It looked like a German Shepherd, pretty good sized German Shepherd. Didn't look starved. It looked like it was well maintained. Yeah, almost like it was guarding something. So I think somebody's doing, whether it be, weed's legal there, so they don't have to grow it in the woods anymore.
Well, which some of the stories that I've heard were about a guy that was growing weed in a house right up there somewhere in Turnbull Canyon, and that's where all the crazy stuff was apparently happening.
But it wasn't a coyote because it wasn't, didn't look starved. But who's feeding that dog?
Right. Because you're in the desert. A dog, and don't get me wrong, dogs are animals. If you take a dog from birth with its mom and you drop it in the woods, if the mom's grown up out there, it'll be all right. But the dog's not running from your backyard and just completely thriving that far out. Yeah. That's why when you see stray dogs, they're normally in the city. You can get to trash. You can get to people feeding you. A stray dog does not stay miles away from civilization. It doesn't have the skills of a predator like it needs.
Right. Now, and I even heard stories of video cameras. Cameras posted on these fences. Mm-hmm. So there might be some people. Maybe there's a base there. CIA's got a safe house there. Who the fuck knows?
Or that could just be chalked up to the fact that if you go to California, there's fucking cameras everywhere now because there's you have the population that raises a crime rate naturally.
But okay, we're gonna end this here right now. But I think there's something going on there. I agree. 95% of it's bullshit.
Even if you don't want to believe in the stuff that you and I see and think, it's, if nothing else, like, feel free to go look into it. Right. It's very. If you can find any podcast on it, I've listened to several. It's a very interesting story to jump into, right. Or even if you're just reading articles, it's almost a never-ending source. Every outlet seems to have something else that the other one didn't cover.
Yeah, I mean, there's an energy there. Now, could some of this stuff be real? Possibly, but I think people are experiencing something. I just don't think it's. I think people are doing ritual shit there. Well, at least they used to be. They might have brought something in, or they might not have. Who knows?
Which, in my mind, that stuff doesn't just end. Like, you don't stop once you have a good spot to worship who you worship. Right. You don't stop going there.
Right. So we are going to end this episode here. We are, just like we talked earlier, we are going to continue the conversation over on, but the only way you can get to it is through the Patreon page. That is patreon.com/GITM podcast, I believe. It'll be in the description.
I'm new. I can't help with any of this information.
He can't help. I haven't given him that information yet.
I'm useless.
I'm keeping that close at hand till
I'm just here for the
after I hit the end button. But we are going to end it here. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe to all the social medias for the podcast. He will be more active on he's going to get all that shit so he can interact with you guys on social media at Ghost in the Night, or on Facebook. If you're watching live, you obviously know that. But if you're listening to this podcast, you can catch us live on Sundays at 6 o'clock at Ghost in the Night on Facebook. If you want to follow us on Twitter at @night_ghost. Instagram, Ghost in the Night. Oh, I don't know.
We'll put it all the links will be in the description.
But be sure to hit that Patreon. Be sure to support us. $2 is all it takes to get the bonus episode, or the continuation, the after party of this episode, where we're just going to shoot the shit and probably talk a little bit more about Turnbull Canyon, maybe give our true thoughts, and we won't hold back a little bit.
And all the little stuff, man, like the likes, the subscribes, comments, shares, all that stuff really helps this stuff, this world grow.
And if you do join the Patreon, you get that, but you also are going to get a shout out on an episode during the live show stream, or when I do an episode during the week if he's not here. Or I do the throwback episodes, like the Throwback Thursdays I'm thinking about doing, where I get some of those older episodes and just replay them. That way I know they're definitely on the podcast feed. I will do a shout out for you in the beginning intro. But it's only $2. We do have some other tiers, and we are going to add some tiers to give you a little bit more bonus stuff as well. But we're going to do some investigations here coming up. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know I do the On the Hunt, where I actually play audio and video from an actual investigation. We're going to get him out on an investigation.
I'm so pumped for that.
That'll be a good time. But that is going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining the party.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.